Oh, I am Allegra, and today I want to share with you just a simple illustration to give you an idea of how I approach personal budgeting. Please forgive the glare in my whiteboard. It's the best setup I have at the moment. And quite simply, I can really geek out about this stuff. I have been using this approach to personal budgeting myself for over 15 years. It's inspired by a framework called YNAB, You Need a Budget, which is an approach to budgeting that's been around for over 20 years now. There's also an accompanying app. It's a piece of software that supports the framework. But what I'm going to share with you and the YNAB principles you can use even if you choose not to use the software. There are a couple of things that this approach assumes. One, it assumes that you're debt averse, which means ideally you're not taking on more debt. Now, I understand everyone's circumstances are different. It's possible you need access to credit just to keep going month to month, but at the very least you want to slow that rate of debt accrual down, if not eliminate it altogether. So this is not a debt friendly, or it's an approach that again assumes that you would rather avoid taking on debt. And two, it also assumes that you're willing to give your money some attention. We live in a time where we do not have to pay attention to our money. You can go weeks, if not months, not looking at your checking account balance. Between credit cards and debit cards and payment apps, it's just so easy to spend without actually thinking about the impacts of that decision. And I believe that's why so many people feel out of control of and confused about and uncertain about their money. It's very easy to keep our heads in the sand and to just not look at things because we really don't have to, especially with credit cards. But I believe that to become more confident about and more clear around and to have less drama about our money, we need to look at it. And if you think about it, there are only a few transactions that are happening every day, right? Like there isn't a lot happening if you're willing to be consistent about paying attention to your budget, and that's what I'm going to invite you to do if you choose to go on this journey with me. So here's the illustration. I want you to imagine that you go to the bank and you withdraw all the money from your checking account. I recognize you may have lots of different accounts, but for the sake of simplicity, let's imagine you've got one checking account. That's where your money lives, and you're going to take it all out and you're going to put it in a pile on your kitchen table. There's all your money on the kitchen table. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you a bunch of envelopes, and I'm going to ask you to label those envelopes with the spending categories that you have in your life. Now, your envelopes are going to look different than everyone else's envelopes. But for a simple example, it's helpful to think about things like, what are you going to buy this week? What do you need to spend this month? And really importantly, what are some things you're going to have to spend in the coming year? Okay. The second rule of YNAB is to embrace your true expenses. And your true expenses include things you are going to be buying, but a little bit down the line. All right. So starting with kind of sooner and zooming out to later, depending on your circumstances, maybe you're going to need to buy some gas this week. So you want an envelope that you label gas. Along with the glare, my whiteboard is very squeaky. So it's an imperfect system, but we're going to go with it. So you need gas. Perhaps this week you'll also need to buy some groceries. And maybe you do some dining out. I don't know, do you like to stop by Starbucks when you're out running errands? You go out once a week to your favorite restaurant. It's probably helpful. You probably need an envelope for dining out. And again, other envelopes, you label them to your particular circumstances. What do you need this month? You probably need rent or mortgage for the month ahead. If you have any monthly subscriptions, I'd be surprised to meet someone who has 0 monthly subscriptions. So let's assume you have one. Maybe you got Netflix, but you need an envelope for all of your monthly subscriptions, etc. And then I want you to think about those things that happen annually. So remember, like there are things you're going to have to buy or plan on spending in a few months that you want to start setting aside money for now, these true expenses. So in my case, I have an envelope for the holidays, right? So maybe you have a holiday envelope. Perhaps you have an envelope for maybe your insurance bill. Sometimes insurance payments are 2 or 3 times a year, so you have an envelope for insurance. And don't forget about those expenses that are expected but unpredictable. So things like vet bills. If you have an animal, you're going to have, you know they're coming, you just don't know when. You need an envelope for that. So maybe you need an envelope for the vet. If you have a car, you want an envelope for car repairs, right? Because you know those brakes are going to have to be repaired, those tires, all those things. So one more envelope, let's say, for auto repairs. Set your envelopes up. These are called your categories. Once your envelopes are ready and you got your pile of money, what I want you to do is I want you to assign all of your dollars into the envelopes. Rule number 1 for YNAB is give every dollar a job. And all that means is make a decision about the pile of money you've got on the table and decide what you want it to do. Do you want this dollar to be a rent dollar or a dining out dollar? Is it a gas dollar or is it an insurance dollar? There's a power in making some decisions and allocating this money into the envelopes. So you're going to take every dollar on the table and you are going to distribute it to the envelopes. Okay, and you got a couple over here. Boop, boop. And I want you, again, all of it. There should be no dollars left on the table. We call this zero-based budgeting. We're gonna give every single one of those dollars a job until you have envelopes sitting there full of money. Now, you might not have a lot of money to assign. You might not have enough money right now to fill all these envelopes completely, and that's fine. In those cases, you want to think, what do you need your money to do before the next money comes in? What do you need the money you have today to do before the next money comes in, whether through a paycheck or some kind of inflow? And when that happens, when you get more money that comes into the account, you do the same thing. You distribute all of it into its envelopes. This is giving every dollar a job. This is embracing your true expenses. Rules number 1 and 2 of the YNAB approach. Now, the third rule of YNAB is to roll with the punches. What this means is that the way you've assigned your money is flexible. If you discover you need a little bit more money for dining out, let's say you get invited spontaneously to a lunch with friends and you look in your dining out envelope and you're like, I've got no money there. What do I do? You can move money between envelopes, right? All the money that you've got is in here. Putting money in these envelopes is not the same as spending it. This action here is different than the action of spending. Spending is when the money actually leaves an envelope and disappears in exchange for something else that you want. So know that in this space here, you can roll with the punches. You can move money as needed. Every day if you want, you can be like, oh, I think I want a little more here. I want to move it around. But you can only work with the money that you've got. This is very, very important. This approach to budgeting is very present-minded. We are not putting your future paycheck in these envelopes. We can't. You can only work with the money you've got now, and you can only spend the money you have now. If you're spending money that you don't have now, you're taking on debt. And we're trying to avoid taking on more debt, or at the very least, slowing it way down. So when you go out to spend, and this is the final thing I'll share in this video, and then I'll put a break on things. When you go out to spend, the rule that I want you to keep in mind is to find the money first. This, again, is the habit that we are very much out of touch with, especially if you're using credit cards. If you use credit cards, it is designed to spend money that you don't currently have. It's like your envelopes are empty, but you're still going to the grocery store, or you're still going to eat out. Because credit cards say, it's okay. You don't need to have it today. You just need to have it in 30 to 60 days when your statement comes due, right? And even then, if you don't have it, that's okay. We'll just start charging you. You can start paying us for more time. That's what interest is. So this particular approach really asks of you to find the money first. And that goes back to my example. Whereas you get invited, let's say, to go out with a friend for lunch, you've got nothing in your dining out envelope. You've got to find it. You've got to move it around from other envelopes, or you have to wait until you have more to assign. This can be very challenging. This is where habit changes really come into play, but it is incredibly empowering. And it's very insightful to realize that this endless kind of infinite supply of stuff that we thought we had is actually finite, that we are working within some limits. But within constraint, we can find a lot of creativity. And if you are willing to start thinking about your money in this way, I know that you're going to, one, feel much more in control. Two, you're going to know what's happening. It's going to be very clear. And with that comes a lot of not only awareness, but I think empowerment. Because when you can see it, when you see very clearly what your money is doing, where it's going, how you're spending it, that's when you can start to change things. Excuse me. Woo! That's when you can start to make deliberate decisions and can start to make change and to turn your money from this like amorphous kind of unknown thing into a project. And it can actually be quite fun. So I want to leave this here. In the next video, I'm going to share with you how the YNAB app actually makes this much, much easier if you'd rather not put all your money on the table and stuff it into envelopes. But for now, please feel free to leave any comments, any questions below, either below the video or send me an email. I'd love to hear your reflections and help if something's come up that doesn't feel clear. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll be back again soon.